Oconomowoc Common Council meeting for Tuesday, December 6th, 2022. Has appropriate meeting notification been made?
Yes, Your Honor, it has.
If you'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, welcome everybody and happy holidays. Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak.
Here.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
Here.
Alderman Ellis.
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Here.
Alderman Mulder.
Here.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Here.
Alderman Kavieski.
Here.
Alderman Douglas.
Here.
Motion for approval of the minutes for November 15th, 2022.
So move, Kavieski.
Second Altman-Cloth.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll move on. Next part, I would like, without objection, to bring forth the mayoral appointments on 10A. We have 2 appointments. We love it that they're volunteering for the city, and we'd like to make sure that they're not here a long time tonight. So any objection from council? Okay, Susan Marshall, if you could come up for, please. So I have brought forth Susan Marshall. You have her information in front of you to help us with the Fire Commission. And I'm going to leave it open for you for comments for Susan.
Me comment? Well, thank you for the invitation, Mayor, to serve in this role. Proud to represent the city. Proud to lend whatever knowledge I can bring to the Fire Commission, and excited to learn more about what they do, how they do it, and how I can be of service.
Do we have any questions for Susan? Alderman Kavieski.
First, thank you very much for agreeing to serve in the capacity. You've served the city in other capacities in the past, I believe.
I have volunteered in other roles, yes.
So I think it's great when you have residents that engage in their time and talent, and hopefully that motivates others to do the same. Even if you don't get a chance to get engaged right away, if there's not an opening, I'd highly encourage, if anybody's watching or hearing this, get your name in and express an interest. And thanks for what you're
My
doing.
pleasure, thank you.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
I just wanted to say thank you also for serving. I got to know Susan many years ago when I served on the Christian Women's Leadership Board at Wisconsin Lutheran College. And over the years since then, we've sort of overlapped on some things. So I think she'll make a great asset to the commission.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Any other comments, questions? Like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved, Ellis.
Second, Kavieski.
Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Susan. We're
Thank you.
fortunate to have someone of your caliber giving us more of your time.
I appreciate that, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next mayoral appointment is Mark Knight. Mark is newer to the community, and I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about himself. He is being recommended for appointment to the Bureau of Economic Development and Tourism Commission. Welcome, Mark.
Well, thank you very much. With the brand-new business here in town, the Town Place Suites, been in the hospitality industry.
I'm going to have you
way
pull
back.
up your, there you go.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Normally, I'm not hard to hear. I'm with the brand-new Town Place Suites in Oconomowoc, just joined the community, opened up in October, last end of it. I've been in the hospitality industry for a little over 40 years now. I would like to very much learn more about the Oconomowoc community, see what its challenges are, and see how I can help.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Mark? Alderman Rozak.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for applying. I'm a Marriott Points guy, so I really appreciate you guys coming into town. So if family has to stay, I know where I got to put them up. It looks like you also served on the Tucson Chamber for a while. You had some other
Correct.
experience, so
Yeah.
we really appreciate you applying and getting involved. I sit on the Tourism Commission as one of the alderman appointees, so I look forward to your thoughts as we move forward with a lot of our objectives and money spent and everything. So welcome to the board.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments for Mark? Thank you very much. I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved, Ellis.
Rozak, second.
Call the roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder? Alderman Shellpepper? Alderman Kavieski?
Aye.
Alderman Douglas?
Aye.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to getting to know you better.
Well, thank you.
On to the comments and suggestions from citizens. These are the cards that I receive. If anyone else would like to make public comment, please come up, fill out the card, and then you can give it to Mr. Duffy here, and we'll make sure that your comment is put in place. So we're going to start with Bruce Nanninger.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Nattinger, and I am Chair of the Lake LaBelle Management Board. For those unfamiliar with our role in the greater community, we are a governmental body established through state statutes for the singular purpose of protecting and rehabilitating Lac La Belle. Lac La Belle is a jewel in our community. While it remains a beautiful asset, it is also frankly endangered. Just this year, the DNR listed Lac La Belle as impaired due to excess levels of phosphorus. Additionally, high levels of suspended solids cause the lake to appear murky. Aquatic vegetation levels have dropped nearly 90% in the past decade. While it is the Lake District's specific responsibility to rehab the lake, we cannot be successful without the help of our partners, the city, the town, and the village. We believe it is both essential and central that the four of us work cooperatively to improve and enrich the quality of the lake and thus the quality of our communities. Tonight's agenda presents a design engineering services contract to rebuild the boat launch, including shared costs. While the case can be made that a lake management district should not be involved in off-the-water construction, we see the broader picture. There will be elements of the project which will affect the lake itself. Because of our collective belief in the need for cooperation, the Lake District has agreed to contribute our fair share of the proposal, 25%, or $39,407. Please also note that our board was the first to commit dollars to this project, which we did September 1st. We've been busy this year with other projects to rehabilitate and beautify Lac La Belle. It is believed that the suspended solids causing the lake to be murky are essentially marl, which forms a large portion of the lake bed. One contributor to this suspended marl are the common carp, which stir up the lake bottom as they feed and are invasive species, coming into our lake from the Rock River through the Oconomowoc River. We have been working with the city's DPW to reestablish the carp barrier at the dam, thus preventing more carp from entering the lake. We agreed last April to fully fund this barrier. Through the DNR, we recently contracted with a commercial fisherman to remove carp and other rough fish from the lake. In fact, they were out this week and anticipate a total harvest exceeding 80,000 pounds. It is of critical importance that that carp barrier be reestablished before the spring run of carp into Lac La Belle diminishes this effort. You may also be aware that we work closely with the OWPP and contribute significant dollars annually to this effort. And on the beautification front, this year we supported 7 lakeshore restoration projects. I know what you're thinking. I do work with some pretty awesome people on the Lake Board. We look forward to working closely and cooperatively with the City of Oconomowoc as we envision the future of the city and of the greater community of Lac La Belle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the open candor and discussions we've had over the last several months. Your support is huge for the whole community. Thank you. Next up, Frank and Chris both.
Maybe Frank and Chris both, 423 North Lake Road, Conomowoc.
And Frank and I are here tonight representing the Build Rockwell Park fundraising team. And we heard you last September, and per your suggestions, the community has raised the money to fund the Phase 2 engineering and design work for the John and Lavinia Rockwell Park. We didn't need a lot of people here tonight to show support for that park, because we know that you understand the community is really behind this project. We have over 1,200 donations to date and growing. Your support of the partnership between the city and the community is generously appreciated, and it's an example of really what makes Oconomowoc special. We are moving forward, and it's really exciting to see the work starting. We see all the trucks going past down the street, and it's just wonderful to see something happening now. And the fundraising team continues to raise money for this legacy park. So we really want to thank you. This is a really special project, I think, for the community, the visitors, and the future generations of Oconomowoc. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kathleen Hefner.
Good evening, everyone.
If you could list your address and city in which you live, that would be great.
Temporarily 2139 North 65th Street, Wauwatosa.
Okay.
But moved to Oconomowoc in 2000, and we've been here for 22 years up until recently. With Century Foods and Little Vittles long gone, I approached Judy Schulte a couple years ago about putting a mini market, boutique market, little grocery store in that location. Once I started bringing in contractors, realized that the building was in pretty rough shape. Her husband became ill, COVID happened, and the idea for that kind of went to a back burner. So I was very happy and excited when I was introduced to Jeff and his team about the Rockwell project, the boardwalk expansion, and all the great things that they're going to do, you know, in that location. Part of my discussion with him and his team has been to put a boutique market in that location. That's my own personal interest. And one of the reasons why I feel that's so important to our community, which is a huge walking community, it's just going to benefit so many different residents and visitors that come here. Just to share some fun examples, I work for Freighter in the OR, one of the surgeons that I work with, he loves to bring his kids to City Beach. It's one of their favorite things to do, but he made a comment to me that when he comes here, it's difficult to take little ones at the end of the day into one of the bars or restaurants to get food. So if you had a little mini market or a boutique market, he could come and get the juice boxes and the snacks and the suntan lotion that he forgot. I think about all the fishermen that I see, you know, that come into town to just fish on Fowler. You know, they could come into the market, get a sub, some bait, a beer, and go enjoy the day. Welcome to Ocon. You know, this is all easy access. Or our yoga folks that come, instead of getting food or drinks, they can pop into the market before they go to the green and, you know, get a fresh juice. So again, those are some of my personal reasons for wanting to do that. One of the other reasons why I feel that it could benefit the community, is with our seniors. We have senior housing across the tracks. We have senior housing down on 2nd Street. My own mother used to live next to Draper Hall, and one of the difficulties in talking with some of the seniors in our community who either can't drive anymore or don't have cars, have to rely on friends and family to drive them, because all our grocery stores are driving distance. We have nothing that's walkable. So I really feel like for some of our seniors, it would help them be empowered to be able to walk to the end of the street or the block to just get basic things. So again, that's my personal interest. That I can make happen with Jeff and his team, and I just really hope you approve the project. I think it's going to benefit us in so many ways. Thank you.
Thank you. I only had 3 comments, so without any other comments brought forward, we'll move on to our consent agenda items. Our consent agenda item is Resolution 22-R3087, adding/combining wards for elections. Like to entertain a motion?
So moved. Second, Mulder.
Diane, can you just give a really brief description so the audience knows what this is?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So this is a housekeeping item. Every year, the county looks for us to put together a resolution where we would, if we have added wards or combined wards during the year. When we redistrict, due to the census in 2020, we ended up, we had one county supervisor, and because the city had grown so much, we now have 2 county supervisors. So this resolution ensures to let the county know how the ballot should be split. So what areas in the city vote for County Supervisor 1 and what area of the city votes for County Supervisor 2. This helps them create the ballot, the 2 different ballot styles the city needs to accommodate those votes. And again, it's a housekeeping item.
Thank you. There was a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. On to finance, consider act on resolution 22-R3084, authorizing indexing of impact fees and sewer availability charges effective January 1st, 2023. Ms. Murray Sullivan.
Hi, before you tonight, we have our annual indexing of our,
Sorry.
no, it's all right.
Sullivan Murray, I
Sullivan
flipped
Murray.
those two.
Her name.
Sorry, Lauren.
This is the annual indexing of our impact fees. We do this every year at the end of the year for next year's fees. We use the construction cost index in order to, that's the measurement that we use. Basically, this helps us keep up with inflation a little bit and the rising costs. So this year, the construction cost index is about 5.7%. The fees from 2022 and 2023 are shown in your exhibit.
Questions, Alderman Rozak.
I just have a kind of an interesting general question. I was just thinking as I read through the packet, which is, suppose we go through a significant recession like we did in 08, 09. Do these fees ever go down?
Not while I've been here, but, you know, I don't know, that's an interesting question. We would look at what that construction cost index is every year.
Right.
That's, our ordinance says that that's the index that we use.
So if
So
that is
if that's a negative index,
Right.
then we would have a negative change in our fee as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Rozak, so moved.
Any further comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper?
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski?
Aye.
Alderman Douglas?
Aye.
On to consider act on resolution 22-R3088, revising fixed assets capitalization policy effective for the fiscal year 2022.
That's correct, thank you. This capitalization policy, I'm going to laugh because Mark was giving me a hard time about this. It's not about all caps and it's not grammar. It's about our fixed assets. So the policy was last revised in 1999 and has a threshold for fixed assets at $5,000. Just due to increased costs over the years, we talked with our auditors about this and are putting forward a policy that changes that threshold to $10,000, except for in the case of infrastructure assets, and then that would be $25,000. So this is, like Diane says, a housekeeping item. It's strictly accounting. It's for our financial statements. It doesn't affect our budget or the way that we purchase anything.
Comments from council? I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper?
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski?
Aye.
Alderman Douglas?
Aye.
Next up, consider act on resolution 22-R3086, levying special assessments against benefit property for Thackeray Trail project, which is the St. Jerome's congregation.
Right,
Lori.
so this is for the Thackeray Trail extension. So when St. Jerome's was built, when they built the church and school, the 2004 developers agreement acknowledged that that road would go in eventually and that the church would have a responsibility of 50% of a rural cross-section road. If the city hadn't postponed the extension, they would have been required to put that in at the time that St. Jerome's was built. So now that it's all done, the accounting's all done, we're ready to put that special assessment into place. In the exhibit, you'll see the total costs. So the city share and St. Jerome's share. You'll see the city share is larger, and that's because we also did the Thackeray Trail reconstruction, and we put curb and gutter and storm sewer into that street, so the extension got it as well. The city took that cost on, and the rural cross-section costs are charged to St. Jerome's. In the agreement, the interest rate is the city's interest rate plus 2%, so right now that would be about 5%, and since their share was $437,000, they asked for 10 years to pay the special assessment, and we've agreed to that, assuming that you approve this resolution.
Questions or comments? Alderman Kavieski.
So I'm a member of St. Jerome's Catholic Church, and this arrangement for a cost share was put in place with Father John Yankee, and the project has benefited the community. The cost share wasn't unexpected. There were members of the congregation of the church that weren't up to speed, but the city engaged quickly, and this is a good end to the project in regards to providing the extension of time for the church and for the parishioners to raise that money to make sure that it's fulfilled. So they're a good partner with the city. They provide a lot of service and a lot of value, and the 10-year period of time I think is very appropriate.
Any other comments? Alderman Rozak.
If we special assess a resident for sidewalk, do we let them pay for over 10 years?
It really depends on the cost. So we take a look at, and I don't have the rules right in front of me, but a certain amount and, what the amount's going to be per year. So I can bring that maybe for you next time. I don't have it with me, but, it's like once it gets to be over a certain dollar amount, we have 3 years, 5 years, 10 years.
I think sidewalks are, I think it's 5 for sidewalks is what
Usually I think it's 5 for sidewalks, yeah. And that's a lot smaller bill than what this is.
The size of the bills is only a factor of who's paying it, though, right? If I have to pay for 20,000 in sidewalk, that's a lot of my net for the year. 430 for a congregation is not necessarily as big as it looks. Just want to make sure everyone's being treated fairly.
Any other Alderman Kavieski.
Just based on the concern, and those are always good comments and review in the public eye. This is being paid over the 10-year period at an interest rate
5%.
that is associated with it. It's not a gift necessarily in the deferment. So to all the points, I just want to make sure that the public is aware that it's not a non-interest.
No, and in the Northeast region, the special assessments up there are for 10 years as well.
Yeah, but here's the difference, is here we had a developer's agreement with the church that provided for the 5 years. So look, we're changing it, just so we're clear. I'm probably going to vote in favor of it. I don't really necessarily have a problem with it, but I want everyone to be treated fairly. And when we enter an agreement with a developer, we should try to hold them to that agreement, whatever that, whether it's a church, whether it's a ballpark, whether it's whoever. We should try to make them comply with that agreement and not come back and change it.
Yeah, so Alderman Rozak, don't worry, it'll get there.
I'm glad you're not sitting next to me, Mark.
Yeah, so when the project actually was coming forward a few years ago, and part of the resolution did provide to allow them for the 10 years at that time. So we had already reviewed that and had voted on that prior to the project.
Alderman Mulder?
I mean, the specific language is, it's shall have at least 5 years to pay such assessments. So whether it was agreed at that time or 10 or not, it allows for 10 years. I don't think it's not instructive that it is 5 years. 10 years was agreed to. It's not relevant, it's not in here, but we can grant we can grant more than 5 years.
Fair enough.
Like to entertain a motion?
So move, Kavieski.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper?
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski?
Aye.
Alderman Douglas?
Aye.
Next item, consider act of agreement for payments in lieu of taxes, a pilot program from Lutheran Homes of Oconomowoc, commonly known as Shorehaven.
Shorehaven, yes. So we had an agreement with Shorehaven. We've had an agreement with Shorehaven for many years. They have been upping the amount that they pay to the city over several years. We're at $100,000. Their agreement basically that had an end date expiration. Not only was it expiring, but we had the fire referendum. So it was a good time to get together. The mayor and the city administrator and I got together with Dale Dahlke from LHO and just kind of went over the costs and what we're asking citizens to pay for the fire and for the referendum, and asked them to take a look at their budgets and see if they could find some extra money for the city too to help pay for that. They went back to their board and came back with I feel, a generous proposal. Similar to what we do with Towner Crest. They took a look at what their building values were, took it against the city's tax rate from this last year, and they actually do pay taxes on some of their buildings, so they subtracted the tax out that they pay. Come up with about $255,000. They're at $100,000 right now, so their proposal is to pay the city an additional $25,000 a year for the next 6 years to get them up to that $250,000. We're appreciative of their efforts and the proposal that they brought forward. I was going to say, in the past, generally when we've had an addition to a pilot that was there before, we've let people step into it incrementally so it doesn't totally break their budget. But anyway, the first $25,000 increase would be payable in 2023, and it will bring them up to $250,000 in 2028.
Comments or questions? Alderman Altman Cloth.
Just out of curiosity, what would their taxes be if they did pay taxes right now?
And that's what, that's what I was
Is that the
saying.
250?
They would be right around that $255,000, yeah.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Thanks, Lori, and kudos to everybody involved in negotiating this, because we've talked for years about, hypothetically, what would this look like? And I know I had talked to you with the value of the building versus our tax rate, and that does come to about $250,000. But by 2028, the value of their buildings is going to probably be a lot more than what they are now. I mean, I know we can't force them to pay pilots, but is there any idea to potentially going back to Towner Crest or them and potentially renegotiating down the road?
Yeah, and Shorehaven also said, they may want to build on in the future. Something changes, then they'd like to come back in and talk again. And we can, renegotiate this. This is, completely voluntary. We can't, they do this because they're a community member. And they want to support the community. But they did say, should they want to change or build something else, that they would come in and talk to us about it again. And the same with Towner Crest. I mean, we don't assess them every year because they're tax exempt, right? But every few years, we can have the assessor take a look at it. We can talk to them about, what that change may be.
No, and thank you, because this is a good start. It puts them on a path of being fairly equitable with Towner Crest, so I think that's good.
Alderman Rozak.
Yeah, good point, Karen. In my head, that was a great point. I think this is a good start. I'm glad you guys were able to negotiate something out of them. I personally think they should just get up to the 250 now. My only concern that I have, and I know this is voluntary, but in section 3.2, the language starts out, it is the intention of LHO to contribute similar sums to the city in the future, but it basically ends in 2028. do we believe, I don't know who did the negotiation, if we could set after 2028 a minimum of the 250 and it doesn't go below that?
That's a good idea. We can't do that?
Why?
This is a voluntary
You
pay.
can agree to
Voluntary thing,
anything, you can
yeah.
rip it up
I mean,
tomorrow.
if they
No, no.
agree to that, we could.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's my point. Because it
To
says,
give a floor.
yeah, to give a floor that,
Yeah.
you know, that we're allowing that, well, not allowing them. They're voluntarily going up slower. Obviously, we've said that the nonprofit portions of Shore Haven are valued similar to Town or Crest. So I think the 250 probably seems like a fair number. They're moving up to 5 years. What I'd love to see is a floor on this, that after 2028, if there's no negotiation, they're gonna at least pay something, whether that's a 250 or something worth their equalized value at the time. So if the value goes down, you know, or their value goes up. I think we could write something very simple in that portion of it. And honestly, I didn't get a chance to look at the packet way ahead of time, otherwise I would have made that suggestion before tonight. So I don't want to
No, I
end
understand.
the whole deal.
And
I would
we've
vote,
had
I'll
agreements.
vote for it tonight if that's what we think is best, but if we think that there's some willingness to put a floor on it at an assessed value after 2028 without further agreement, that's what I would love to see in there. But we could also go back and renegotiate that as well.
At any time, you know, especially since, you know, they do have plans to build on in the future. But the 2028 is really like, if nothing happens, this at least gives us a time period where we're going to get back together and talk about it again. Same with the last agreement, which really said 2021, and they were at 100,000. And they paid 100,000 in 2022 as well. But, you know, it gave us a time where it's like, yeah, you know, this is the time when we should go back and talk about it again.
Okay, so then I think that's a good point. So because this goes out to 2028, this isn't emergent now.
Right.
But I think the addition that I'm proposing and that we try to negotiate at some point in the future is after 2028, whether we agree on something in a couple of years from now or closer to 2028, that the 250 or some assessed value of the properties that are nonprofit at the time become the base without further agreement, and move forward with that. And again, that could be a discussion we have years from now or next week,
Okay.
you know, so.
Alderman Kavieski?
Alderman Mulder would like to go ahead of me, and I'm fine with that.
Okay.
That's okay.
Matt, under 4.2, the automatic renewed for 1-year extended terms unless terminated under paragraph 401, which doesn't specify a date.
Yeah.
So it seems like it does go in
I think the
perpetuity
intent
unless,
is it gets to that amount and continues there. I think that was the intent.
I mean, it isn't specific.
For one more year at least, it sounds like, the way that reads.
Yeah. And they can stop at any point.
Yeah, after that, it seems like it's just one more year beyond the term. So it presumably would stop at
I was
2029.
reading that as perpetual, but yeah, you're right. I think
Yeah.
it's worth having in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is kind of what they did with the first agreement. It's very similar to the first agreement where they add that extra year on the top.
Alderman Kavieski?
So, good discussion. Ultimately, whatever agreement is in place is completely voluntary, so you could put this out to 2072 and it could go away in 2023. The effort for them to participate voluntarily in covering the costs associated with provided services that include Western Lakes Fire District, PD, and other vital services is important to our budgeting. It is important to them in getting the services that their residents need. So it is good to see. It is, while some may consider it generous, it is helping to cover the costs associated with the services that they get. So I am appreciative of Shore Haven doing that. And as a resident of District 2, where Shore Haven is, they're a fantastic part of the community, and those who live there and work there provide a lot of value to the community beyond the pilot. So nice job putting it together.
I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved, Ellis.
Second, Kavieski.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman-Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper?
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski?
Aye.
Alderman Douglas?
Aye.
Next item up is consider act on resolution 22-R3080, granting a new 2022-2023 Class B intoxicating liquor fermented malt beverage license to Shotskis LLC. Diane?
Mayor. The city has received an application for a new combination Class B intoxicating liquor fermented malt beverage license for a new business that'll be located at the former Break Shots. The owner of the Break Shots building has several months ago closed the Break Shop, his operation, business operation, and was looking to sell the building. The building did not sell, but a new business is going in there, and it's the same type of business that was in the premises. So the owner, the licensee of Break Shots, has agreed to surrender their license effective December 7th if council grants the new license application to Shotsies. And if council chooses not to, then that license would not be surrendered. So that would still be retained by the owner of Break Shots. The licensee does meet all the Chapter 12 code requirements and also state statute requirements, and I recommend granting the license.
Any questions or comments? Like to entertain a motion?
So moved, Ellis.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
On to consider act on resolution 22-R3077, awarding Rockwell Park Phase 1 construction management contract and budget amendment. Reminder, this is a budget amendment and needs a supermajority of 6 votes.
Good evening. I just have one last name, so it's easier. You didn't even use it tonight.
What are your pronouns?
For the meeting. So the good news is Rockwell Park is under construction, and so we're excited about that. And this is the construction management for the first phase. So we did the normal process. We sent out RFPs. We received 3 back. We did our scoring for technical, and SEH was first, followed by Oneida, and then Clark Dietz. Once we opened the cost envelopes, it changed a bit. SEH was still number 1, Clark Dietz was second, and Oneida was third. But we wanted to bring forward that SEH did design Rockwell Park Phase 1, and it's been typical of the council to follow that the same one that designs it does not do construction management. But we invited them to at least submit a proposal because of the low number of the cost of this project or the management. We budgeted at $30,000. So we actually heard from a few firms that said, we're not interested, it's too small for us. So we invited them, they submitted. Financially, this is gonna be money that would be donated by the Friends of Oconomowoc Parks and Trails. And in fact, it's already in the city's account, along with the funds needed for Phase 1 construction. So we understand the council's, what you've done in the past and what the typical response is. Staff will support whatever the council chooses to do. But my professional opinion is that SEH for this specific project is the best firm. They've done similar projects in West Bend with the Riverwalk, which is very similar to what we're doing with dewatering, the Ready Rock block, that kind of information. When we scored the proposals, the main difference really comes down to similar projects and staffing. SEH's staffing was a little more seasoned. They've done a number of these projects. The staffing for Clark Dietz, they mostly had trail projects. We've worked with them in the past. They helped us with Rosenau Creek and did an okay job, but all their experience was trail projects. So we just thought, based on the expertise for this small project, with it only being a $19,000 contract, that we thought SEH would be the best for the city. So again, these are not to exceed contracts, and we're gonna let the council choose, and I'm happy to answer questions, but the price for SEH is $19,220. Clark Dietz would be the second choice, and that's $17,960, a difference of just over $1,200. I think that's the information I have for you, but happy to answer questions.
Mulder?
Sorry, this is just a point of order. So the committee recommended that we pass SEH on, and that's what we're voting on, not whether or not, is that correct? That we're voting on what was moved on for approval, not.
That was just a recommendation.
Recommendation, okay.
Yeah, so you can do whatever you want.
So the recommendation at the committee level was it passed 2-1 for SEH to be the contract holder. And again,
Alderman
as the mayor
Ellis.
mentioned, this is a budget amendment, so it would have to have the 6 votes.
Alderman Ellis?
Thank you for the work that you put into this. In the past, the biggest concern has been that in the past, we've allowed this to happen where we've had a design company come in and then become the construction management. And the concern is accountability. And in the past, we've kind of been burned as a city. Whereas I appreciate your expertise in working with these individuals. When do we learn from our past, is my question. And that this is why I made a recommendation to go with Clark Dietz. We're looking at a $2,000 difference. And I think that it would be to our advantage for purposes of accountability and to learn from our past. We had a situation that when we looked into it, we spent a lot more money than we really should have with one firm. And so that's why I kind of feel as though we should really consider going with the number 2 in this case instead of the SCH.
Alderman Kowalski?
I appreciate the comments Alderman Ellis has made, and you're spot on. You know, previous situations led to the policy that we have with that separation. This particular project, and we've made exception to that policy over the course of time since it was instituted, based on the type of project that's being brought forward and using the expertise of the firm to guide that. I think SEH has the expertise associated with it to a higher level and continuity associated with that project, and the recommendation, isn't something that we have to follow. It does carry weight because ultimately we hold you accountable for how the project comes together. So for all of those reasons, I think that's why at committee it came through with SEH as a recommendation for council to consider. And I'll support SEH as the contract.
Alderman Outland-Cloth?
So if we have a policy that we don't allow the company that did, the design to do the construction work, why did we go to them for a bid on this then?
I invited them to bid because I didn't think we'd get any people to bid on it. In fact, Oneida, none of us have ever heard of. I think they do large DOT projects, and they just happen to have a little extra time. So we would have had one firm apply if Clark Dietz did it. So that's why we did. Anything that happened in the past, I don't think SEH was involved with that. And I think you've made some great changes. I think the not to exceed contracts is important, very important. And accountability, yes, this falls on staff to follow up with them to make sure they're doing their work and they're following through. And it's basically, it's written as hours, so it's an hourly contract. So it's possible it could be less than the price if there's not that many hours invested.
I guess having not been here for whatever Alderman Ellis is talking about, and just trusting that you're saying that this is the company that we should go with, and you've worked with them before in West Bend, correct?
Yes, and we've worked with them here, obviously, in
Okay, I'll be
Oconomowoc.
in favor of what you recommend. I was just curious what the history is.
Alderman Kowalski?
So the history associated with that separation was primarily in DPW's role, street projects, and you had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of oversight to millions of dollars worth of construction. This is a much smaller in scope and more specialized project, which are some of the differentiators. It's not uncommon for me to hear somebody, a resident, say, "Why do you have a policy if you never follow it?" Well, sometimes common sense for smaller projects such as this ultimately end up saving more money and time and provide a better project.
I know it's not my turn, but do we normally not make a habit of going to somebody that would make us break this policy?
For street projects, and that's where I think most of this came from, they'll advertise in the RFP that the designer's not eligible for it. So it's very typical of streets. I know there's been some exceptions, and I think Lou said it the best. It's a very small number, and it's a very specialized project, so it's a little bit different.
Alderman Ellis?
Go ahead.
Oh.
He had his hand
I thought
up.
you had your hand
I
up.
did too, but he had his hand up before I did.
Doesn't matter.
Alderman Rozak?
Kevin and Mayor. Yeah, we put the policy in place across the board. It wasn't just for street projects. Really, the goal was to separate that and to create that oversight. That's the goal. When we've gone off of that council policy, it's typically because there were really exigent circumstances like tight deadlines, no qualified bidders, et cetera. Simply saying we think they might be better because this is a real specialized. I mean, we're regrading the site. We're putting in some riprap, whatever it's the same thing we did at Rosenau Creek. So I actually appreciate Craig going to SEH. I think that was smart, very smart decision, knowing that we weren't getting bids in to see how this would compare. But ultimately, if we have the policy, we should try to follow it when appropriate, when there's no real exigent circumstances, and when we can save the city money. And in this case, we're saving the people that are donating $2,000. And this is just construction management. This isn't design. The design's already done. So I'm going to vote against SEH, and I'm going to vote for Clark Dietz if we get there for those reasons.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Is there a chance that if we have SEH, and obviously we have exceptions to the rule of our separation, but that if we have them, there would be, I don't want to say economies of scale per se, but knowledge of the project already that could perhaps make this come in under the 19,000, maybe under the 17,000?
I don't guarantee anything.
I know you don't have a
but
crystal
yes,
ball, but, you know.
in my mind, yes, SEH is familiar with the project. They know exactly what to look for. They can, again, we're fine with whatever the council chooses, and we understand all that. I'm not trying to push one or the other. I just know based on some of that behind-the-scenes work that they're going to be able to do it that much quicker, get up to speed. They're the ones that gave them some of the information on how the walls get built and where everything, it's, they've already done some staking for them. So they're very intimate into the project. They understand it best. It'll take a little more time, obviously, to ramp somebody up to it, and we can do it either way.
Alderman Ellis?
So, before we go to vote, I just have a question. And the question is, why do we create or have policies if we don't abide by them? What's the purpose? Is it just we have some free time and want to talk over stuff and kind of throw our weight around? Or is it there for a purpose? And I think in this case, it's there for a purpose. Now, I'm not saying that SEC is not a good company. I don't know much about them. I appreciate everything that you stated, but we've got a policy, and the policy is enforced for a reason. And I think in this case, we need to abide by it.
Alderman Kavieski?
If you wouldn't mind, so these funds are being provided through Oconomowoc Park and Trail?
Correct.
Donation.
Donations that have come into them, and then that's been forwarded to the city.
And we have a representative here of that organization?
They've already spoken tonight.
I'd love to know, though, since it's through those efforts that the funds have been raised, if they're okay with spending a little bit more with this particular firm, since ultimately those funds were provided through that method. That'll carry
Chris,
some weight for
Chris,
me.
would
If
you
you would
come up
rather
to the
save
podium?
$2,000, if you don't care.
1,260, let's be specific.
The fundraisers.
Can't hear him on record.
Doesn't matter.
Well, it's
What
do they think saving, it's at $1,260.
It's not 2,000.
Not 2,000.
It's not about the money in this
Right,
case. It's
right.
really not about the money.
I think
It's-
you
it's-
need to
it's about-
decide what you want to
It's
do.
about the organization. It's not about the money. The money is the money,
Hmm?
whether it's 19,000 or it's 17,000. It's about who is going to get it. That's the question.
Okay. Alderman Mulder?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 22R3077 for Phase 1 construction, awarding it to SEH for a cost of up to $19,220 plus the 10% contingency for a net total of $21,142, including a budget amendment for the donated funds.
Second, Kavieski.
Any further discussion? Reminder, for this to pass, we need 6 votes. Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Nay.
Alderman Altman Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper? Alderman Kavieski?
Aye.
Alderman Douglas?
Aye.
So it does not pass.
It does not pass.
Move
Excuse
to
me.
approve Clark Dietz.
So moved.
1 second.
So we have a motion to switch and use Clark Dietz. We have a second. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper?
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski?
Aye.
Alderman Douglas?
Nay.
Motion carried.
On to our next item. Consider act on contract for building inspection services through December 31st, 2025. Administrator Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. The item before you, excuse me. I'm good once I get ramped up. The item before us tonight is the contract for building inspection services in the city of Oconomowoc. The firm that we've been using, we've had in place for some time. And it was just 3 years ago that the council had directed staff to review the contract that we had and the cost allocation and revenue sharing that we were doing within the agreement that we had. The original agreement, it was just a single tier of 60% went to the building inspection and 40% went to the city. We went to a 3-tier system, which allowed that same 60-40 for the first $150,000, and then it shifted to 55-45, still in favor of the building inspector. And then after 300,000, it switched to 60-40 in favor of the city for everything beyond that. We've had a few good years, but they've been because of projects that we know aren't sustainable long-term. But we've been extremely happy with the services provided by Wisconsin Building Inspection. They, in addition to the services that are here that we're talking the cost and revenue sharing on, they also provide a lot of services at no additional cost to the city. They do all the liquor license inspections, that's annually. And they also inspect all city projects at no additional cost. They take care of all the fire property damage, any issues to the city. All of that is also done without any cost. They have a team of 8 inspectors. So in a year like this, when we had the hail damage and we ended up with roughly 1,300 roofing permits that came through in a 6-month period, a lot of those still need to be done, but they had the horsepower to be able to do that on top of everything that we did have going on in the city this year, which was, the Mandel Apartments, Olympia Fields, Sendex. We had a lot of projects. They never missed a beat. I've received no complaints about them in the short term. I've probably received a total of 2 complaints over 16 years with them. So we're very, very happy with their services. They're taking care of everything that needs to be done. We haven't had any issues. They're all certified. They're knowledgeable. They take care of their own training. So we are recommending that we do another 3 years with Wisconsin Building Inspections for our inspection services.
Any questions for Mr. Fry? Alderman Rozak.
How many questions are we allowed to ask him?
Oh, no.
All night. I'll talk all night.
Poor guy.
Mark, did we have any discussions with WBI towards the end of this contract on how it's working for them?
Yes.
Okay. Good, bad, ugly? I mean, are they making enough money? Do we feel that there could have been any changes to the percentages that would have benefited the city taxpayer anymore?
they were good with the agreement and indicated that they weren't looking for any changes to it. As I mentioned, that, you know, we've had a couple good years, and that's reflective in the additional revenues. If you look at the past 3 years of the contract, after we changed from the single-tier system, the city benefited by $297,000 with this agreement, so.
Well, much like the last discussion, where I heard some of the exact same debate items brought up, this was another one that we debated, we pushed for a change. And I was kind of hoping after 3 years that we would have had a little bit more discussion with them. Could we have moved these percentages around, good or bad? Small shifts in these numbers could have made, you know, additional difference to our taxpayer. I'm going to vote for this tonight, but I hope, you know, in 3 more years that we take a real hard look at the numbers. And is there some, you know, are they doing good? You know, are they being able to pay all their wages and have their people happy? But on the same token, do we think that just like the first time around, we had significant debate about how much money that group was bringing in the door based on the old formula? And what we've seen, at least in the last couple cycles, is there's been significant funds returned to the city that in this last couple budget cycles, we wouldn't have seen but for that change. So I guess in my head, I'm thinking, why did we not go back to them this time and say, hey, instead of it being, you know, 45% in the middle, why isn't it 50? Could you live with that? And maybe that's an extra 10 grand, maybe that's an extra 12 grand. We had debates at the council floor on budget cycles for less money than that. So I'm going to vote for this tonight. I think they're doing a good job, but I'd like in 3 years, whether I'm here or not, to have a more holistic discussion with those folks about, you know, how are you guys doing? Are you, because if they didn't ask for a change, that means they're probably doing good, and maybe we could have pushed back for an additional percentage, and that makes a difference for our taxpayer.
Alderman Kavieski.
So there's 2 parts to that equation. One is the percentage and scale of compensation, and the other is the fee associated with that. And I believe during committee we talked about that fee being addressed prior to the 3-year period of what we're looking to review here. So it's a balance game. We're ahead right now. Hopefully we stay ahead because we continue to have a lot of activity. Those numbers wouldn't play out if we weren't in growth mode, if we were in a slowdown. So it's always good to look at those contracts and how we compensate and how we get compensated in the best interest of the taxpayer. I'd rather have a vendor that provides us with a service that we don't have complaints, right? We don't. I've actually had compliments on them, and ensure that that continues, then try to squeeze them to a point where they don't have the personnel, they don't pay attention to us, and we have complaints associated with the growth and the experience within the community.
I'd like to entertain a motion.
So move, Kavieski.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
I apologize. Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Bless.
He got 2 ayes.
You all do.
All right, on to our next item. Consider act on resolution 22-R 3079 awarding the Oconomowoc Community Center exterior railings contract, and again, a budget amendment. So we need a supermajority vote here, if you approve it.
Hello again.
Mr. Hepner.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Magnus. So everybody's been to the community center, I believe. I showed you some pictures. Unfortunately, the railings outside of the community center have been rusting for a long, long time. So we're trying to mend that. We did do a quote back this year earlier, and Badger Railing did the front section, the front steps and the front entryway. And we wanted to make sure that looked good, is the right product. We spent a lot of time researching. I want to thank Jenny Fremming, because she spent a lot of time on this as well, Brian Spencer, just to try and find the right product, because it was steel, that's what's rusting with salt. So we're doing aluminum and then stainless for the railings or the handrails. So we did bid this out because this is a larger project. This is for the handicap ramp essentially. And we had one bid. It's also from Badger Railing for $53,825. They would remove, fabricate all the railings, install about 190 feet of aluminum railings, stainless handrails. And they would plan to fabricate over the winter and then have this put in early in spring. I mentioned what we did before. So this money, so what we're looking for a recommendation is to go with Badger Railing. It's $53,825, contingency of $2,500. So total project cost is $56,325. And this comes from two sources. One is previously budgeted capital funds, and then the last piece is community center reserves. And again, as the mayor mentioned, this is a budget amendment. Happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions?
Rozak, so moved.
Second, Kavieski.
Any further comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, consider act on resolution 22-R3085, awarding the 2023 street program design engineering contract and budget amendment. And welcome again, our new public works director,
Yeah, thank you,
Jason
Mayor.
Herzog. So,
Yep, Jason Herzog. You got it.
Aren't they required to wear ties?
no.
Yeah, thanks for having me here tonight. Just wanted to bring forth our RFP results from our 23 street project design. This was sent out to some 22 different engineering firms for their consideration, and received 3 proposals back. This is for work that was contributed to the design of the road program next year, along with some water main relay, sewer, and a bike path replacement. So out of the 3 proposals, you see that Ayers was our highest point total in the system for our process here, and resulting in a cost of $132,386, with a contingency of $13,238 as a 10%, and total price of $145,624. And I would be happy to answer any questions for this or the work that it might be for. We will be doing some work on Oakland Avenue this next year, which will be one of our primary pieces of work, as it'll be phased in with some water main work along with the street.
Questions from council? Alderman Spiegelberg.
One question. So you said you sent out 22. Of those 22, how many actually requested from us?
There was probably 17.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay.
Alderman Kavieski.
Bolson Drive included in the street projects for next year?
Wilson is not.
Bolson?
Bolson.
Yes.
Yeah, Bolson is.
Yeah.
Bolson and Capital, which were part of the 22 program,
Yep.
are both back into this. Yep.
I don't
Alderman
see them in here,
Altman-Cloth.
though.
Bolson's on there. It's right here. So actually, speaking of Bolson, I'm assuming that work would be done, after the second week in June. Would it be done? I mean, it looks like there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that road. Would it be done in time for school to open back up?
That would be the idea, is we would like to open a small window for that.
And whoever we go with understands the importance that that road has to be open by the time school
Correct.
resumes?
Yep, so our specifications also includes a time frame for each of the roads, most likely, because Oakwood would also have a similar one. It'll have considerations for the events. It'll have a phasing plan for the water main work, and language directed to the contractor.
It's kind of become a sport to drop a kid off at the high school with a cup of coffee and see if you can get down Bolson without spilling.
How full is the coffee cup?
It's pretty full.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Every
I'm-
year, you have to less and less coffee in it?
Alderman Ellis?
My my concern is, why did it take so long to complete Summit or Silver Lake and Summit at the corner right there?
So
What
the
happened?
intersection work, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
There was a considerable amount of work to that, as there was a full utility replacement, the water main, signal upgrades, electrical underground. I believe they started, I wasn't here, but I think I understood they started just after Labor Day and finished up maybe the last week in October, so.
Right before Christmas.
It was probably a fairly decent planned, they were probably maybe a 1 or 2 week longer than expected.
Because once again, we do have the school opening in Boston and things on those lines, and are we gonna have that same problem with this here because of the fact that it went as long as it did? Do you understand my
Well,
question?
I understand
Or
totally.
my concern?
No, I understand totally what you're saying. To answer that, I would expect them to. I'm not in full control of, all of their crews. We do put stipulations in the contract that would allow us to have some leverage for timeframes like that.
So there is something written in the contract that says, hey, we can't sit on this for a full year.
Yeah, we try to write our language so that the leverage is on our side for timeframes on that.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Kavieski?
Silver Lake and Summit started prior to the Festival of the Arts, I believe. So it was sometime in August, and you weren't here. And that has, I think the point of the question is, with what we're approving today, that the community should have some assurances that timelines for those main and important arteries to reach the destinations that they're looking for have been accommodated for in this.
Understood.
I'd like to entertain a motion and remind you it's a budget amendment.
So move,
So mo-
Kavieski.
Second, Altman Cloth.
Wow, speedy. Any further discussion? That is. Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Under our next item, thank you, Jason. Under our next item is consider act on approving 2022 utility write-offs. Ms. Sullivan? Murray? You weren't going to get up, were you?
And Julie, at the end of the year, we bring you the utility write-offs. For the most part, the utility doesn't have a lot of write-offs. They have the ability to put delinquent, delinquent utility bills on the property taxes so that they get collected. However, we can't do that for bankruptcies or people that move out of the area. So this year, we have $3,777 to write off. I believe that we budget about $14,000 for write-offs, so this is considerably under, what we would expect it to be. You can see in the exhibit the amounts that are being written off and also the historical record of how much we've written off in the past few years.
I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved, Ellis.
Second.
Any further comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Next up, consider act on resolution 22-R3028, awarding design and engineering services contract for Lac La Belle Boat Launch and enter into an agreement for cost sharing. Mr. Hepner.
I want to be very clear, this is my only item that is not a budget amendment. All right, thank you. Thanks, Bruce. So this goes back, you can see by the number on the resolution, goes back a few months, April 19th to be exact. We had this conversation, and it was at that point the council wanted to see an MOU with our other partners. And so after a few months in between, we have come to that agreement. I know we've had some discussions with the council in closed session. just to refresh your memory, we went through the whole process of RFPs and scoring and technical and cost envelopes. And we are recommending MSA, who is the highest scoring of the group, to be our consultant for this. And MSA, I've been in contact with them because it's been a few months. They have agreed to keep the cost of the not-to-exceed contract at the number of $157,630. We would include a 10% contingency. And then it breaks down under financial impact, the partners. So with our spelling this out, the city of Economowoc would pay $78,223. Lac La Belle Management District would be $39,407. The village of Lac La Belle would be $20,000, and the town of Economowoc would be $20,000. So this is something that's been discussed at Park Rec Board, Council, and I know Stan has gotten the MOU put together, and I think it's been signed by a number of the parties. So all four entities are in agreement with what I just explained. This is, again, is for design engineering of the boat launch project, not construction, only design engineering. And tonight we ask for your approval so we can move this forward and start working on the project.
Questions or comments from council? Alderman Ellis? Oh, no. Alderman Kavieski?
I think this is worthwhile in noting that this is the first step in addressing the boat launch and the quality of access to the lake. This has been a long time coming, and it is good to have all of the neighboring communities and entities associated with the lake involved in sharing in the cost, because then there's sharing of input associated with that. While it's a feature of the city, and the city is maintaining the boat launch, it serves all of the communities. And I'm glad we were able to get it done before the end of the year, or it would have been a whole nother conversation. So it's a good thing for the community.
Alderman Rozak?
3 quick questions. La Belle Management District voted for this already. I believe the town did. We're next. Has the village of Lac La Belle voted for their share yet?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Yes,
that.
all have.
All four have voted.
Okay, so we're the last one essentially then at this point. A couple real quick points. It was prescient for the council to hold off on an original vote on this several months ago while we push forward the concept of an MOU, because I think it forced all the parties to actually come to the table and make this agreement. So I think that was prescient by the council to hold off on that earlier decision. The other thing I'll note, which is of interest, is it goes back to a couple other discussions from a few previous items. We were told a long time ago that we would never get people to bid on projects that were not to exceed contracts, not to exceed bids. And guess what? We have 4 or 5 every time. So we've got another not to exceed, and they held it open while we monkeyed around with this agreement. So I think it's just interesting to note that history, and that, in fact, that wasn't true. We did get people to bid on not to exceed contracts. So I'm in favor of this. Thanks for all your work, and for the mayor and Mark also. I know you guys put a lot of time into negotiating this and working with these guys, so.
I'd like to provide Alderman Shell Pepper the opportunity to make a motion. He's worked really hard on this for 2.5 years.
Well, thank you, Mayor.
You're passionate about it. I love
Yeah.
it.
Well, I'll make the motion to approve the award and design and engineering services contract for the Lac La Belle boat launch and enter into the cost-sharing agreement.
Second, Ellis?
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper? Alderman Kavieski?
Aye.
Alderman Douglas?
Aye.
On to our next item. Consider act on resolution 22-R3071, awarding the John and Lavinia Rockwell Park Phase 2 design service contracts. And this again is another budget amendment.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to start out by trying to talk, but when Chris and Frank both were at the podium tonight, I was remembering back to the amount of work and effort that has gone into the park so far, and I just wanted to step through a couple of those things so that everybody's well aware of what took place prior to tonight. But the opportunity came up after a development did not move forward on the parcels. The Hero family stepped up, purchased the parcel next to the water and donated that to the city at a cost of $600,000. And then Chris and Frank went out and led the team to raise just over $1.3 million in order to purchase the parcel. And we eventually tore down the house that was there. So, you know, right there was, you know, $2 million that came from the generosity of the residents of the city and people from this area. So I just wanted to note that. And on top of that, there's other funds that have continued to come in to help fund the projects. We talked about the design engineering of the $85,000. That was an item tonight. And so the city has also put forth funds. There was originally $150,000 in the budget, and we've spent a portion of that. And then, although I had requested $500,000, the council approved $300,000 to go to the construction. So all these dollars have been allocated to the construction of Phase 1, which is undergoing right now. But I just wanted to point out that, you know, this is what makes Economowoc great. When you sit back and you look at these things and you look at the generosity and the effort and the hard work that a lot of people put into projects like this. So I'm looking forward to moving forward on to the next phase and getting it built. So with that, I'll turn it over to Craig Hepner with no hyphenated name and let him take care of this.
Thanks, Mark. So we obviously talked about this back in August, so I have all the old business items. And I think now makes a lot more sense in most of our minds that it's a good time to bring this forward. Two reasons I see is because now Rockwell Park Phase 1 has been under construction, and that all this money for the Phase 2 design will be donated funds. If you recall, we had it split between city funds and donated funds last time, and we hadn't started the project. We didn't know about the grant and some other things. So I think the timing is much more appropriate, and I think that's why we're bringing it forward. This would be with SEH. So they finally get in on something tonight. And then we're asking if the contract would be not to exceed $85,000. This has been held as well throughout this year. They've been good about that. We're not doing contingency with this, so it would fit within there. Two items I do want to bring forward, because they're always the most asked about, is the turnaround and the restrooms. So I think we want to address both of those tonight and through this process. We've talked, Jason and I have talked, and Mark and SEH to say, hey, we want to explore the options. We did address this in the concept plan, but maybe not that deep. So we're going to look at the turnaround, the passing lane, or option 3 is nothing. So we need to look at that in depth. So right now in the concept plan, it shows the turnaround, but that's going to be discussed through this process, the design. And then we're also doing a line item budget on all these items. So there's the overlook, there's the front porch, there's the restrooms, there's walkways, there's turnaround, there's many, many things that'll be listed out. It's not a lump sum bid that we would come up with. And it'll give us some time to go through the design process. It's going to give Frank and Chris and their friends more time to raise funds, because there's a lot more funds to be raised. There may be grants involved in the future. So there's a lot more work to be done, but as we go through this process, that's when we get the true cost estimates. In real life, as we know now, from even 2 or 3 years ago, things have changed. So that's an important piece of this. So I just wanted to bring those forward, that those will be addressed. We'll put that through this process, and I'll be the leader through it, but there'll be a lot of people obviously involved in this too. So tonight, we're asking for approval of the contract with SEH for $85,000. It is a budget amendment, and it is with using donated funds.
Questions or comments for Mr. Hepner? Alderman Kavieski.
So through this process, I've requested, and other aldermen have requested, a review of the design that would be associated with this, as you outlined. That hasn't happened. It hasn't happened in committee of the whole. It hasn't happened on the floor. So the design that is moving forward, I don't want to have any missed expectations from the community as approved by the council. And I think we need some wording in this to help make sure that the expectations and the funds raised come together, and we don't have a miss with that. I appreciate the efforts associated with fundraising and where these funds are coming from through private donations. But I think it would be prudent for verbiage to be added to ensure that we hit that mark. So I know there'll be some discussion. I'll offer some suggestions if no other suggestions are made in regards to that wording, and look to move it forward.
Jennifer, or Altman Cloth?
Jennifer works too.
Not Jenny.
No, never. I'm trying to think of how to ask this. So I know that it's been talked about, you know, the mayor has mentioned this to me, you have mentioned this to me, that if we go to design on phase 2, and it's gonna be a la carte, you know, there's gonna be, you know, the different line items, you know, for the turnaround, for the bathrooms, for the rain garden, for whatever. That when we go to approve it, if we don't like certain aspects of it, that at that time we can vote against it or pull it out. I'm trying to find my question here, so just bear with me.
I'm listening.
My concern is, that, so we go to design, the fundraising group, I mean, they just like knock it out of the park. I mean, they more than raise everything that they need, you know, for the bathroom, for the roundabout or turnaround, whatever we're calling it. If they have the money in pocket, do we still have the ability as the council to say no?
Yes.
Yes, you have that ability.
Okay.
Good luck with that, if that happens. Good luck with telling the community you raise the money and we're not gonna allow
Okay,
that.
and this is where I'm going with this. That is my concern. And I've been very upfront about this. I'm indifferent about the bathrooms. I see the benefit of them, but I also see you coming to our budget next year going, I need more money because we're putting all these bathrooms around town that now Park and Rec have to maintain. I have issues with safety with the turnaround. So I'm 99% in favor of approving this tonight because it's, in a sense, it's not the city's money. My concern is that by approving this tonight, we're gonna lose control in the future.
Well, I'll give you my spiel, and then Mark can chime in, because he can address most of your questions. That's why we do the line item, but you're right. I mean, if Chris and Frank raise $2 million in the next 6 months, or 9 months, or 12 months, whatever it is, we want to go forward, right? But it's still going to be a line item. The bids all come back here. You still have to say yes or no. I have a couple suggestions, but I won't suggest them until I need to, how we could handle that. But yeah, it's an important question. That's why I brought it up straight on. The turnaround, like I said, we'll address that for sure in the design. Jason and I have walked it, we've talked about it. We want it to be safe, so 3 options: turnaround, parking lane, nothing. I think nothing's probably a bad option, but so it's probably down to another 2, but that is an option. So I think that can easily be addressed in the design, and working with SEH and probably a traffic person, they're gonna say, this is the most safe piece, this is the best way to handle handicap and drop off, and whichever one it is. So I'm not too worried about that. The restrooms is always the biggest question. But going through this design right now, we've put a number of 250,000 in. It could be 500,000, it could be 100,000. I can't tell you right now what that number's gonna be. If it's 500,000, I don't think these guys are fundraising for that either. So I'd like to know that. And again, yes, eventually the city needs to talk about maintenance of restrooms. If we're doing Rockwell condos and City Hall and Northeast and Rockwell Park, or wherever they are, we will have to discuss that. So that's an important consideration.
Alderman Kavieski.
So I appreciate the conversation associated with the turnaround specifically, and that is verbally being discussed, but again, I'm going to look to incorporate some verbiage into what we consider for approval. I've been on council long enough to know that at the end of the day, these are the documents that are referred back to, and not necessarily the conversations that occur on the floor and that are understood at that time. And it's not anything to do with you, but where it says drop-off area, for example, maybe after that it's drop-off area and options as shown, and as cut in, or whatever that terminology would be appropriate for those options. And perhaps verbiage is added, whereas Phase 2 design may not represent final approval of design elements as created and budgeted. At some point, that would need to and should come before council, so those who are providing their time, talent, and treasure know where it's going to be applied.
So let me throw out one thought I had, just because I understand what you're talking about. So would this make any sense, I'm just throwing this out there as a consideration, to run it through the Park and Rec Board for this, the final design? Because we have 2 aldermen that sit on it, we have 6 citizens, staff has input, but it's really kind of the community that picks it. I'm just throwing it as an option. If that's something that you'd feel more comfortable with, I think that's something that fits because it's the park, but.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and if anybody, I get, throwing out ideas. I would prefer it come back to this body, maybe with a recommendation and review from Park and Rec Board, but ultimately this body, whoever is serving on it, because I may not be serving on it at that time, is going to be responsible for the budget associated with the maintenance and long-term operation of that park, and which is why we're here. So that's why I think it should come back here.
So what are you asking for, Lou? What do you
Can't
want?
hear you, Matt. Can't hear you.
What do you want? What are you asking for?
So what I'm looking for is verbiage to be added. And I will need some help with the amendment, verbiage. But in the second paragraph, where it talks about the drop-off area, that it is options as shown in the current design and as a cut-in, or whatever that terminology would be, associated with a pullover lane for drop-offs.
Right.
Alderman Rozak.
Yeah, so I think I know what you're getting at, I believe. So I wrote this out, because Craig already said that there's going to be line items for these major features, for, the bathrooms, the front porch, the turnaround. So my proposal would be we just add something to the end of the second whereas clause that says the plans will be returned with line items for major features with alternatives. And then you could add to be considered by council, at a later date, something to that effect. I think that's a real easy, very simple. If there's money associated with it, it's got to come back to council anyway, because we have to do a budget amendment to put the money in to fund it. So we could add that little section in with, with final council approval there, and then I think that makes it very clear. Because I don't think the Park and Rec Board should make those final calls on the spend. That should come here, because this is the best avenue for people to come in and voice concerns pro or against items, and petition us for a change or addition or whatever, so.
Again, I don't want the community to go through the fundraising efforts prior to that approval and have whoever's serving on this body deny the acceptance of donated funds to implement one of the features and have that council say no.
So if I can understand this, the resolution is to award a contract that's already been drafted. The resolution awarding it has got all the fluff in it that says because this, because that, because this, because the other thing. The actual language of the contract is what we're talking about here tonight, and it is the direction to the designer, this is what we want you to do. Now, if you want to pull stuff out of the contract, now's the time to do it. I mean, if you want because we have this language in the resolution awarding it saying, well, because we want X, Y, and Z to be considered, that's really not it. You have to have confidence in yourselves that when it comes back to you, if you say we don't want to do it, then don't do it. I mean, maybe I'm missing the entire discussion here, But I don't think anybody that is raising money is thinking that, okay, they're gonna get everything that they want. But you've got to design for all of the options here and then get the prices on all of the things that are in the design, right? Isn't that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I think it was really clear what I just said.
And that might be
Yeah,
a good way to do it.
I think, well, Lou's concern, and I said in the last debate that as long as there was funding, I'm approving this. I plan to approve this tonight. I think what he wants and what I think makes sense is we just add something to the whereas clause. We're not changing the contract. We don't even have the services contract in this packet. So we're not talking about the contract. We're just talking about the resolution approving the contract, which they look at and approve. And that change would be the plans will be returned with line items for major features with alternatives. That's a very simple, that I think addresses your concern.
I think that's very fair.
Go with that. So that, is that the amendment motion?
Well, I'll just throw it out there for debate, and if someone wants to talk anymore
No,
about
let's
it.
not debate.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
No, I'd like to go ahead and move to adopt Resolution 22-R3071 for a not-to-exceed contract with SEH Inc. of $85,000 to provide design engineering services for John and Lavinia Rockwell Park Phase 2, including a budget amendment of $85,000 for donated funds with the added verbiage to the whereas Phase 2, second paragraph of the resolution.
Second, Ellis.
As stated by the one I just, oh, okay.
As stated.
And I can provide that to the clerk after the meeting.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Alderman Rozak will email that language to you tomorrow morning.
I can hand it
wrote
to
it
you
down.
tonight. I already
That's
wrote
fine.
it down.
Got it, yeah.
Okay. Okay, on to some new business. Consider act on the parking lot lease for Dvorak property adjacent to 130 East Wisconsin Avenue.
So,
Oh, you gonna present it?
yeah, I know.
Oh.
I wasn't gonna do it, but I thought I'd jump in anyhow. This is the property that is the former May Garden Center, just to the west of us here. They're looking at the area on the very back side of the building. There's pictures in the packet showing the lease area that they're requesting. Currently, there is a central dumpster corral there that would have to be removed. There's a list of other things that they would have to do to prep this area to make it usable. And there's a memo from Jason Gallo, our planner, that walks through some of the expenses that we estimated for the work to be taken care of. But they've worked with the city and we've worked with utilities and everybody involved because there's a transformer that sits there and there's some underground infrastructure there. But city staff is comfortable with this agreement going forward. We think it'll be a nice addition on the back side there. One of the options that we did explore was potential parking spaces. So that cost is in there for that, but quite frankly, even though we're showing 3, it would probably only end up 2 because of access to the transformer. So the agreement that's here tonight is for you to consider. They've offered $600 for a lease payment for this on an annual basis. And, you know, Jason Dvorak is here and I'm sure he can walk through and explain where that number came from. But city staff is comfortable with the agreement that's here before you tonight at council.
Jason, do you have anything else to comment? I was trying to get Mark's voice covered, so.
Yeah, I can tell you what he's gonna say.
No, we've been working on this with Mr. Dvorak for a while. We think it's an improvement. We're looking at creating 2 front doors to these properties along the lake there and the lake walk. It's about 1,200 square feet. We have historically rented other spaces. Todd's rented space from the city, so it's not uncommon to do this. We did not want to sell it. That was the initial request, was to sell the land, and we don't want to do that. We want to keep it. We looked at parking is very important, and especially in this area, so I did the exhibit, and I took the same size stalls that we have across the way, and I just kind of put those there. We think we could get 2 for sure. 3 would be a stretch because there's a transformer there. The electric utility wanted us to keep that area open. There's also a ramp that goes in the roots right there, so maybe they could be shimmied a little bit. But, you know, you can kind of see 2 is no problem at all. 3 might be a little tight. So I guess you have a couple options. Enter into the lease with Mr. Dvorak, and that they, at their expense, they will remove the dumpster, they'll fix the area up, and they'll use it. Number 2 would be you could convert it to a minimum of 2 parking stalls and have a 3rd area, maybe for short-term parking or deliveries or something, or just do nothing and leave it and just keep it the way it is right now. If you would want to take it to parking, like Mark said, there's some costs involved with the concrete repair, the dumpster removal, the conversion of the green space areas. We're looking at somewhere between $13,000 and $15,000 to do that. Be happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Mulder?
Thanks. I like the design of this. I think it's kind of a bit of an eyesore area right now, so I think it's nice to have something go in there. The dollar value doesn't really, not a money-making scheme for us. I guess my main concern, and what I like about it, is that the public can use the space, but how will the public know they can use the space? It's going to appear to be a private unless
It is
we
going to
sign
be
it.
private if they'll lease it.
But in the agreement, it says the public can use the space when not in use.
True. When not in use.
So what is defined by not in use, and what right, I mean, how does the public, Jason, is it the real intent to have the public use it, or are you, either Jason?
I think I proposed $1 a month rent, not $50 a month. Jason Dvorak, owner of the building. We would put signage out for an event. Bree Wagner, who's the tenant in the back, in good company. You can see we put the glass garage door in there, took the old shed down. It's vastly improved, right? You know, we're not doing events 7 days a week. I don't know, how many did you do last year? So 50 events. But we would block it off. We talked about decorative sawhorses, put some signage on, you know, like table tent signage that says reserved, private event, a couple of signs, so we would try to manage it that way.
Alderman Kavieski?
I'm in favor of the utilization that's being proposed. But we've already had a couple of vehicles go down that alleyway. So what kind of precautions are being proposed to ensure the safety of those using the area, and that opening that up doesn't encourage other alleyway utilization?
Yeah, good question. I know there's the orange little posts that are kind of off-center, right? So the plow vehicle can get through for the winter. I think that's more than what was there before, when the one woman drove down. Well, there's been more than one.
Yeah.
I think with the design and some of the fencing, the decorative flower pots, et cetera, I think that'll help block that off. I think it'd be better than parking spots.
For sure.
There,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if there's other suggestions and at, you know, minimal cost, I mean, we would consider it, you know, but I think it is a sidewalk. I mean, I can't imagine why anyone would try to drive down that space, but.
I've stopped
It's
trying to
been-
figure out why people do things
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Good
If
point.
I could, the lease requires the lessee to prepare and present a plan that has to be approved by staff. So I think you've told staff that that's an issue that should be taken into account.
Fair enough.
Alderman Mulder?
So I guess I didn't really get my question answered. It's open to the public, but it could, if you're 50 days a year, that's 315 days you could have teenagers hanging out in that space, which is probably not what you're desiring, but under this could occur because it's open for public use. So is that the intent, that this is really for public use, or are we misrepresenting what you want in this agreement? Because public use means anybody can eat ice cream there anytime they want unless you're having an event. And then you have cleanup associated with that, and I mean, I fear like a year down the road, you're gonna come back and say, hey, they're trashing our nice party space.
Great question. And it is a yearly agreement, right? So at any given time, parking or any other use comes up, it can always be rediscussed. You know, before we put the Mullins deck in there, there was a deck behind that space, and it really was a community space. You know, Roots Garbage there, late night pizza, and so it was used the same way, and the tenants just knew that they had the ability to use it, but I mean, really, anyone's gonna sit there at any given time. So it's one of those give and takes that comes with one of these arrangements.
All right, as long as you're comfortable with that.
Yep.
Alderman Kavieski.
You guys are contagious.
Getting too close to.
Right?
Want me to take over over there?
Staff review, as you bring it forward, is there a camera there now that captures what goes on in that area? A video surveillance camera? That might be something to consider.
We've got them on
and
Mullins now and on et cetera, so.
It should
yeah.
probably be something,
We can incorporate that in.
staff review.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments?
Move to approve the use with the lease for Mr. Dvorak and, what is it, Good Times?
Good company.
In good company. Sounds the same.
Kavieski?
Further discussion? Call roll.
Alderman Rozak. Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Congratulations. I look forward to sitting there next summer.
During an event.
Next up is consider act on resolution 22 R3082, making certain findings and approval project plan for tax incremental district number 8. Mr. Duffy.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be walking you through the findings as well as the project plan in detail related to TIF number 8 for the North Main Street redevelopment area, which is anticipated to have the Rockwell building project, not to confuse it with the park project, right? We got all these Rockwell things going on. I'll walk you through what we have here. Currently are the 4 parcels, in addition to the other lands that the city would provide, are these on North Main Street. Current base value of this area is $1.392 million. That is a key piece of information as it relates to the TIF district and establishing that base value as we look at a tax incremental financing district. Part of statutory requirements is the existing land use, zoning, and property conditions. This is an area that we've identified as mixed-use commercial, office, and residential, which would likely continue. Existing zoning is mixed-use commercial. This is an area as well that this council has approved a plan development overlay over. As part of the process, and at a previous time, this council approved a blight determination on this parcel based on staff's, the matrix that we put together related to these individual parcels, identifying that 83% of the property within the redevelopment boundary meets the statutory definition of blight. Those conditions specifically, lack of upkeep and maintenance, dilapidated facades, deterioration of improvements, accumulated debris, the vacancy of buildings, as well as inadequate and unsafe electrical systems and water damage to those structures over the years. One specific note, if you recall from the redevelopment plan process, and that blight determination was the insurance company terminating their insurance coverage due to some of the conditions specifically related to electrical for those structures. So through the process, we've identified the project area itself. Again, in the TIF project plan, we're required to identify that, and you've established that blighted area as part of this as the boundary. As you approved in your plan development ordinance, and the plan commission has approved in the site plan, is a mixed-use, multi-story structure with about 12,800 square feet of first-floor commercial and 20 residential condominium units on floors 2 through 5. So other elements related to the project is about just less than 25,000 square feet of parking in various retail structures, one of which we heard in the public comment who has interest in it. One of the other elements is part of the area is going to be utilizing a portion of the Village Green, which we've identified in that overall project approval that you approved. Part of this project plan also includes the, I will call redesign and regrading of the Village Green. Currently, some of that space is used for stormwater and some other elements, and hopes to increase the usable public space for activities and events for the community. Demonstrate how the parking is going to work and the need for additional lands from the city. This will be primarily parked underground for the private use areas. Access to the building through that south access point, but also this will allow the opportunity for the city to expand parking, which part of our discussions and in the next item in the agreement is that this parking area be built and then returned back to the city through a 99-year lease for the public to be able to use it. So currently we have 10 parking stalls. This would expand it to an additional 10 stalls as we continue to have increased demand for parking in our downtown. Another project element is the extension of the boardwalk, which has been tremendously successful. It's our joint effort with the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, the city, and all those efforts. And again, enhancing and trying to continue to reach the goal of pedestrian connectivity throughout the downtown that was identified in the 2004 downtown plan. Talked a little bit about parking already. So this is the specific lot, surface lot that would be built in addition to their underground parking. Public restrooms has been a continual conversation in the community as a downtown as we become a destination. Project costs also identify those public restrooms. That'll be a specific condo unit owned by the city, maintained by the city. In the subsequent development agreement, we would not have any requirements, bless you, as it relates to any association fees and elements related to the structure. So as part of that site development, this is the specific area. The building footprint does extend into the Village Green by an area 67 by 173 feet, or about 11,050 square feet, or 2.25 acres. So this is the area that would, as part of, should you, as we approve the development agreement, which is the next item, would have the city transferring that property to the developer to be able to build their building and the parking components. In addition, we have some upgraded utility requirements that are part of the project plan, new water line, new sanitary line, replacement and relocation of a transformer that serves not only this development, buildings to the north as well as buildings to the east, as well as serves as the electrical infrastructure for the entire Village Green. Another amenity that we think is important to be incorporated in here is a new pedestrian crosswalk. As you know, when we rebuilt their downtown in 2008, we built tabletop crosswalks to slow down traffic as they enter our downtown. Again, in hopes to hopefully make that connection to the north, and as a pedestrian connection, we look to move that pedestrian crosswalk, which meets directly to the western sidewalk system that we built as part of Eagles Landing and Park on Lac La Belle, which would bring you to the city beach as well, further connecting public amenities. talked a little bit about the Village Green. The city will be, there's dollars incorporated into the Village Green, for the Village Green reconstruction. That'll be a future contract we'll bring forward to you as a city project related to this. Many of the other elements being identified in the project plan will be built through the developer. So again, we have not designed the Village Green. That is something that'll be forthcoming, hopefully early in next year, once this project is approved. As part of this, those are the public benefits. What we're looking to see as the project proceeds is a guarantee, as we always do with our development projects, to guarantee that any of the project costs are necessarily paid for over time by the district itself, which would require a guarantee by the developer of $32.221 million as part of that agreement to ensure that any investment made into the project through the TIF, Tax Incremental Financing District Public-Private Partnership, are covered through that specific development, which is the intention of the TIF district. Another element as part of our overall statutory requirement is we can't be over 12% of our overall value. So currently, right now, as this operation shows, we are about, this TIF 8 will bring us to about 5.4% of our overall TIF capacity. So we're not exceeding that TIF capacity at all. And I will add too, Ehlers is assisting us. Greg Johnson's here. If you have any of the hard questions, he's the guy who answers those. But I'll go through the specific charts and identifications. So as we walk through those public benefits and those public improvements, all those site infrastructure costs in phase one total just over $4 million. As part of this discussion and part of the but-for test is, but-for, could this project be built without public assistance? There is a developer incentive in here of $1.5 million. Most of that is site improvement cost elements, which was vetted through that process of the third-party review. That site development cost will not be released until they meet the obligation related to the guarantee of the actual increment. So we've done it different ways at different times based on the project. This one, we felt very specifically that they must deliver the guaranteed value before that payment is released. So all in total, $5,505,000 would be the public-private partnership as part of the Tax Incremental Financing District. Similar to the last slide, $32.221 million, delivered January 1, 2026, I believe is how it really ends up, once it goes on the tax roll by 2025. Those of you on the council are aware, but for the public, a TIF district, a blighted TIF district, has the ability to be open for 27 years. Based on the financial cash flow projections, this specific TIF district has the ability to pay itself off in 17 years. We've always tried to pay them off much sooner than statutory requirements, just as an obligation back to the community, getting the public benefit, but also realizing the development opportunity. So with that, these are all the processes we've had. So the Plan Commission unanimously recommended a very similar resolution to what you did after holding a public hearing. You, as a body, approved the PD zoning and the CSM related to the overall development site, which defines the actual project area. We are here today with the adoption of the TID project plan and to consider the development agreement. If things should go well tonight, we would be prepared and are scheduled to have a joint review board to consider adoption of the project plan to move that forward. The developer has indicated to us, should all these pieces fall into place, they would be moving forward with building demolition mid next week. I think I'm getting nods, which will really kick off the project to move it forward. Questions?
Pretty fence.
Slides, you want to go back? Yes.
Alderman Kavieski.
So in the development of this project, there was community space inside the development itself that was moved outside of the development and is listed on page 106, section 8, as community space feasibility. I think the intent of that was to create a placeholder, and I'd look to amend that for community space design and construction associated with that. It's not necessarily a feasibility study. It is to support the design and implementation of a community space within the TID area. That then I think would satisfy some of the concern I had associated with it not being listed on page 146. And in discussion with you, Mr. Duffy, that originally was going to be under paragraph, or the second paragraph, professional services and organizational costs. But since that's no longer a feasibility study and is really associated with design and construction, is that covered under that? Or would it need to be added as 0.5 to the paragraph above that identifies that portion of the project?
Again, my understanding was it was a feasibility based on our conversations. We can do either one, add it, the professional services. And again, I'm looking at the project plan, so that's page 19, because that's what he's looking at.
Gotcha.
I'll go 154. I forgot that this council
sorry.
packet was like 300 pages.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, when we spoke earlier, I just rolled that as we interpreted it as community space feasibility, identified that as a professional service. If this council decides they want to pull it out as a very specific item under that other paragraph of 5, I think that that's your purview to do that, if you want that definitively broken out.
I'd like to make a motion to amend that as we are considering the rest of the conversation associated with that, to clarify that project ID number 7 be praised for community space design and construction, no impact on the dollar amount, and that it be added on what I have as page 146 or page 19, as the document is prepared by Ellers. Point number 5, which would say community space design and construction, $50,000.
Totally remove feasibility. Is that what the consensus is, I guess?
That's the motion.
That's the motion.
Yeah, so are you making the motion to approve, I approve the whole thing with that amendment, or are you just making a motion to amend?
I'm making a motion to amend
Okay,
for further discussion, if anybody else has any other concerns or issues associated with it, but
I want to make sure I understood. So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
So what's the practical effect of this motion? What's the practical impact?
It's not going to impact
gonna
it
affect anything,
financially. What it'll specifically do is modify just the language in there that it's not a feasibility. It's dollars the council can use for design and construction of a community space. If I recall, the conversations was, at one time early in the process, there was a community space identified in the structure, the Rockwell. At some point that there was what I believe was a consensus to remove that. And again, maybe it was an interpretation on my part, that was a feasibility study of where that could go as opposed to design and construction.
Well, feasibility study could be done as part of a design as well.
Correct.
So I think his language is more inclusive.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So again,
So if it stayed as it is, we wouldn't be able to do what?
design construction.
It wouldn't be allowed
It's
under the TIF.
Allowed?
yeah.
You can still do
He's
design
just
and
reterming
construction.
what the intent
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
I mean, I think Alderman Kavieski, and correct me if I'm wrong, you wanted clarification on this?
Correct.
Because that happened very quickly when we made that addition, but it really won't have an effect.
It has $0 effect. It just has implementation clarity associated.
Well, and it's still not even locked in that a community center is going to happen over there.
Correct.
Right.
It may never happen.
Okay.
It's a set aside.
Okay.
So motion's been made and seconded. Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
I'd like to entertain a motion for the full resolution.
So moved, Ellis.
Second, Altman Cloth.
Any further discussion?
So, is this including the, I'm sorry, we moved so fast through that, I
No,
apologize.
no problem.
Is
This is just the TID, or the TIF district, not the redevelopment plan.
This is not the development.
It is not at all, nope. Cool. Any further questions or comments? I want to make sure these two votes are very important. We do them right. No further, call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
No.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
On to our next item. This is consider act on approving the redevelopment agreement and exhibits. That's the easements and the leases between the city and the Oconomowoc Rockwell Partners LLC. That's why your packets have 360-some pages.
Without the exhibits.
Without the, yeah. So I'd like to open up for discussion, or Bob, there's a lot of stuff in there, so.
Right, and again, I would say there's probably several staff people that were involved in it, so we're probably going to have to take a stand to take a lead and a team approach of all those different pieces, because there's 13 exhibits.
And I do want to thank Alderman Rozak and Alderman Mulder for doing a pre-review before we finalize this document. Alderman Kavieski.
So I just want clarity on a couple things that have come up in conversation within the community. The maintenance of the bathroom is covered by, the cost associated with that is covered by who?
Us.
And the cost associated with the relocation of the transformer is in the TIF and is, it wasn't placed there as part of a master plan associated with the Village Green. It was just kind of, the reason it's being covered by the TIF is because overall.
Specifically being covered by the TIF, it's being covered by the project, the developer.
Right.
And then
Alderman Mulder.
So the biggest issue I have with this is the extended use of the staging area through the end of 2023 and the impact that's going to have on the German Christmas market. And primarily because from the very beginning of this discussion, we were assured that that was not, that this was all being staged out so that the German Christmas market would not be impacted, and that, and I'll be honest, I voted multiple times with that assurance in mind. It wasn't on paper anywhere. Perhaps that's my fault. But now, going through 12/31/2023, the German Christmas market as it existed this year cannot go back into that space. Now I understand there's contingencies. We can do things by having it on Wisconsin Avenue. We can use part of the parking for that. We can speak to that. Jeff and MSA can speak to that. I imagine the deadline, the timeline is in there because this is a huge project and they need those extra 2 months. Actually, 12/31 doesn't matter. You could make it 3/31 because we're not going to use that space after the Christmas market until spring anyway. The problem is it has to be more like September 30th to have it cleaned up and usable space. But I'm not really looking for an answer here. I'm sharing frustration, but one way or another, there's going to be costs associated to the city that I was not expecting us to have because I thought we would be having a space to put our German Christmas market, and at some level, we're going to be incurring cost. And do you have any comments to that, or?
Sure, well, on both sides. The German Christmas market side, obviously the biggest challenge that exists is once that Village Green is disrupted primarily due to the electrical infrastructure, it impacts the whole Village Green. The event that event that takes place there is very power intensive and very space intensive. So obviously, we just got done with one. We do try to take part of December off before we think about the next year. We will have to think about how you can fit all of the amenities that we've been able to build there in that space while a construction project's going on. You watch the operation of what it takes to put that up, take that down, and all of those weeks that it takes. That's really the pinch point. I believe they even, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, they may even ask for longer than the end of the year to be able to use that space. And we shortened it trying to do that. The German Market Board, we will look at alternatives to try to keep it downtown, given all the parameters that exist.
So I guess it's one thing if the space isn't available. Do we have assurances that there will be power necessary to have, if we can just put the tent there? Do we have assurances that at least the power infrastructure will be there? Quickly unravels on me.
No, this is good. We just need to grab the right people.
Lucas, can you lift the mic? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure there's ways we can accommodate to get power there with temp transformers. They're going to need that for the development anyway when they do their construction, so.
Okay.
Alderman Ellis, you had a question?
I kind of figured it would be obvious to me anyway that there'd be space loss through this time because of the construction. How much space loss will there be?
Page 343 shows it.
You know where the sidewalk goes? One that is east-west?
Okay.
North of that.
North side of that sidewalk.
Okay.
Alderman Rozak?
Yeah, this was, actually, I think, a point that both Matt and I did bring up when we did the initial review. Was that last Wednesday? Like, I mean, pretty quick, but I was under the same impression. So I have been in favor of the project in general. So I guess, when did that shift? At what point did that shift? And they needed that extra, it's really just an extra month that they're asking for the staging in that area.
At least 2, because there's a month to set up, so you need to be cleared out of there by
fair.
end of October.
I mean, I
think most of it is a safety component for, and I can if you want the general contractor to talk about it, a lot of it becomes a safety component because again, they're excavating underground in order to build a parking structure to a point. So they need to actually build or excavate beyond that to build what they need to build.
Right.
And there's some elements of staging that they probably need space because remember, they're building in an area that you have a green space to the south, a building to the north, water to the east, and a roadway to the west. It's a very tight site.
John, do you have some comments? You want to come up, please?
I don't think he does.
If you could make some comments on what you've heard. We just want to make sure we know exactly what the expectations are.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Council. I agree with your point. It has been our intention all along to keep the German market where it's located. That's one of the reasons we purchased the property. The last 2 years, we allowed the German market to use our private property between our buildings and the lake. That's where they put their dumpsters. We also allowed them to use the insides of our buildings the last 2 years free of charge. And we even sponsored the market this last year, and we intend to continue to cooperate with the market. We want to keep them there. We'll do everything possible that we can to keep them there and to get our construction out of the way. As far as the construction itself, I'm going to turn that over to John, who's our general contractor.
Sure. I think what I'll do is just address the comments by Alderman Mulder and Alderman Rozak. So the question came up, when did this come about that we're going to need staging to a certain extent that's been provided in your packet through the end of 2023. Through this whole process, we have been running a parallel path of logistics, material ordering, and construction schedule. We've layered in that, all of the approvals needed just to get to this meeting tonight. And beyond that, the approvals needed to start the project. Right now, if we walk out of this meeting tonight, the earliest we could probably start this project reasonably would be April. We have materials that need to get ordered, things that need to get scheduled, and permits with the state of Wisconsin that still need to be pulled. So we took that schedule from a construction standpoint, moving it forward through the year. That space, we don't want to impact the German Christmas market either, but it's almost impossible to guarantee in today's climate of unreliable supply chain that we would have that space completed in time. So if we can, we certainly will. I guarantee you that. But right now, we had to put a reasonable timeline into this agreement for everybody to review.
Alderman Ellis.
That's an excellent point, because you just don't know, bottom line. And this is temporary. This isn't a permanent thing. It's not like we're never going to have the German Christmas party again, or Christmas, whatever they call it, again. Okay? All right, that's kind of what I needed to know, so.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Was there an answer to the question of what additional expenses will there be if we don't have the Village Green for the German Christmas market, and who will be incurring those extra costs?
Because I'm not clear on what extra costs. I mean, part of the TIF district incorporates dollars for the redesign and reconstruction of the Village Green, which would include electrical and some other safety things of what you were talking about.
No, I mean, if the Village Green is not available for the Christmas market next year and it has to be shifted, wasn't that part of your original question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, we haven't figured out where we're gonna put it in the first place and what those extra costs might be. As I said, the biggest issue is space and power, and where do you do that? And that's gonna be a conversation we have as a German Christmas, now I gotta move myself to German Christmas Market Board of saying, what does it take to pull this off? The other thing is, depending on where you put it, the Village Green is a nice opportunity to use it because you can use this space for 3 weeks to a month to be able to do it and put it up and take it down. Without a whole host of army of volunteers to be able to put something up and take it down and do all those things. I moved the last piece out of that building on Sunday night. That was a couple days ago. So again,
Jeff,
that whole thing takes time to do that.
Jeff looked like he had a comment to this.
Thank you. Good question again. As I had mentioned, we were a primary sponsor of the market this last year, and we will continue to be a primary sponsor so long as they stay in the downtown. So to answer your question, we'll provide funds to the market to keep them in the downtown if they have to shift their tent a little bit further to the south, or if the council decides to close Wisconsin Avenue. We'll help with that.
Alderman Kavieski.
So in summary, it's fair to say that it depends upon the location, and that impacts potential costs, and the development is engaged as a sponsor to help with costs. And the community's concern associated with the German Christmas market being there should be at ease, because the development is occurring in part because of what the activity is there that's going on, and they don't want to see it go away. So I understand we had some, conversation associated with that, and for all the reasons that you mentioned with timeline and supply chain and everything else, it would be great to be able to, shorten that, but the last thing you want to do is shorten it and then have it go over, because then everybody's mad. And I know the German Christmas Market Board, along with all the parties that they involve, will come up with the best possible solution based on the situation.
Alderman Ellis.
So the market is going to happen. We just don't know where. But we have a guarantee, your verbal guarantee, that you'll sponsor it at some level. Am I correct?
long as it stays downtown.
As long as it stays downtown. Okay, and I absolutely agree with that. So I don't see why we need to talk about anything more. Let's move on.
Your opinion.
Alderman Altman.
That is my opinion. That is my opinion.
Alderman
I
Altman
don't know,
Clark.
Ellis just said we're supposed to move on. I think regardless, and
I wanna
Karen's,
talk.
Karen's concerns are valid, but I think that this last year has also proven that regardless of a construction project, they've outgrown that space.
Oh, God, have they?
So, I mean, this is an issue regardless if there's a giant construction project. But back to the redevelopment agreement.
Thank you.
Just 1 second. Alderman Mulder, did you
If
still
she
have
had
a comment?
additional questions.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm
Or
done.
that was it?
I didn't really have a question, I had a statement.
A statement. But you were done? That was your turn?
I am
All right.
finished. The floor is now yours, Mr. Mulder.
Mr. Screamer, would you be willing to put $25,000 in escrow to cover additional expenses? It could be associated with that, whether we have to bus in people because we're using parking lots or we're having additional police officer time because now we have traffic congestion in areas. I know I trust that you guys need the space, and I know that you'll continue to support the market. I'm feeling blindsided by this, I'll be honest, and I'm making sure that we are delivering to the community what we said, which was that the market would be uninterrupted, and it's not. There is no assurance that that's going to happen, except that we all think it will.
Mr. Screamer?
Good question. I'm not sure about the dollar amount. As you're aware, the German market is a privately run organization with a private board that makes their own decisions. I can, I guess, reiterate that our past practice has demonstrated that we are going to support the market. We let them use our property and our buildings the last 2 years. We sponsored them this last year. We will continue to sponsor them and help pay for their costs so long as they stay in the downtown. But I don't know what the dollar amount will be. So I guess that's my answer.
Alderman Rozak?
That was a savvy question, Matt. I actually really like that.
I know you
But
would.
I think what Mr. Screamer said before, though, is that if there's additional costs, they'd be willing to assist with those. I think we can hold him to that. Whether he can agree sitting here today to a dollar amount, I think is tough. But I appreciate the question because that's something I would have thought of. So I appreciated that question. But I didn't, so I was kind of mad, like, oh, that's a good.
Here's to get ahead of you, Matt.
Yeah, that's not long. Seeing how long I've been on council, that's pretty good. I do agree with you. I feel a little blindsided by that number as well. We both questioned it. I don't know for me that that's enough to blow up this whole deal at this point. I'm hoping that they move along quickly, they do the best they can, and maybe they free up some additional space and everything moves forward as planned. You know, and frankly, they could have promised to be done by October 1st, and then said, shit, guys, sorry. You know, the steel didn't come in on time, and we're gonna need to use the space. So, you know, they could have promised something that they absolutely weren't sure they could deliver. Now they're telling us, look, we know it's gonna be probably then. If we get done earlier, that's better. So, for me, I think we've heard enough on that issue. I'm confident that they're going to help out if need be and do what they can. So, you know.
Any other comments or questions with regard to the redevelopment agreement? Alderman Kavieski.
Last question, for me. Who is responsible for the redesign of the Village Green, and what does that process look like?
City will be responsible for that. So one of the things we've explored, and I mean, it's probably not a secret, and we'll come back to you. We have reached out to Stantec. We've reached out to Stantec, who designed the boardwalk, is designing the boardwalk for the Rockwell project. Really, again, from the streamlining process of all these things going into it, to hopefully bring something forward to you to ask, can we enter into design contract with them to do this and expedite it to meet those dates so we can have contract documents ready? So when that's out of the way, we can start the reconstruction of the Village Green. So that has been internal conversations of the city, myself, Mark, Craig. Likely it's a park, so we got to have some of the involvement of the park park board and all those types of things.
Any other
On the
questions?
conversation internally, but is specifically a city project.
Other questions for
Funded through
Mr.
the
Duffy or for our applicants? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So move, Kavieski.
Second, Ellis?
Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper?
No.
Alderman Kavieski?
Aye.
Alderman Douglas?
Say.
On to our next item. Consider an act on a tourism commission recommendation and a Lake Country Dockhounds promotional partnership. Mr. Duffy.
So the Tourism Commission, one of the things we're continuing to try to do is continue greater outreach about our destination here in Oconomowoc. One of the things that happened after the inaugural season of Lake Country Dockhounds, which brought a lot of people to this community, and input we received when we met with them, was interestingly 70% of the people that are attending those games aren't from this community, which is a captivated audience. And there was nothing there at that stadium that indicated where they were here in Oconomowoc, which I think we took kind of interestingly as, you know, we live here, so we know where everything is. When you're bringing that number of people in here, how do we best then share the good things happening in our community, the destinations, the activities, and the events? And engaging that conversation, we talked about what are some opportunities for us to promote. Visit Oconomowoc.com, our portal, our website, our promotional opportunities as a community. And we came up with various different concepts and ideas based on some other successes that we've had here in this community. So I'm going to roll through that. As I said, they have a tremendous amount of exposure of people with both not only their games, but their different activities and events, movies, concerts, and they expect to also grow that in the years to come. So it's a tremendous attraction and asset to our community. They have a tremendous following. If you saw those numbers that I provided in your memo, I mean, anywhere from their social media platform, they're touching anywhere from 800 to 1 million people in just 2 months. So that's huge for a community our size to try to do some of those things. But also, you know, what are some things we can do close to the stadium? You know, taking off of what we've been able to do with the Wizard of Oz statues is, do we create something based on their mascot at the entrance of the stadium? I'm gonna go down a little bit, where people can, again, we jointly brand this with the Dockhounds and Oconomowoc. When people are here, what do they do? I mean, I know that Mark's moved down there and the mayor talk about how many people stop and take their picture here. They would likely do that here. Those types of images about our community, again, helping to sell our community are tremendous. They're tremendously beneficial in the way people who share that stuff. I'm not a big TikToker, Instagrammer, or what's the other one? Snapchatter, but that seems to be the way of the world of doing those types of things. That was a concept for us to approve. Interestingly, one of the individuals who had sponsored this area of the seating for the stadium, this is right here, right behind home plate, is no longer interested in doing that for naming rights. We thought a great opportunity from a tourism perspective is promote our community. Visit Oconomowoc.com, both tabletops and that seating area. As far as we can tell, that's in the streamline of whenever they stream these games. This is what people would see, whether they're in the stands or streaming these games throughout as they're played. There we go. See, we can even spec stuff out of what things might look like.
Never fix the stay, dine, stay, play.
No, sorry. Man, I forgot.
Is it supposed to be play, dine, stay, or no?
Play, stay,
Shop,
dine.
dine,
Shop,
stay,
dine,
play.
stay,
Okay.
play, sorry. We should have done that. Other components of this, and again, what we're trying to do is get into an arrangement with them longer term. Basically, all of these different elements, sponsorship of games, recognition on their their PA announcements, video board commercials. You've seen some of the work that the intern's done. We're doing a lot of that work. The more we can share that in different channels, that's how a lot of this element was built. So through those conversations, I know representatives of the Lake Country Live and the Lake Country Dockhounds are here. We built a package of things to try to promote our community on a longer term basis. So what we're looking for and what the Tourism Commission believes is a tremendous investment into continued promotion of our community is entering into a partnership with them for all of these assets and amenities for $50,000 a year for 3 years. We'll continue to track some of those elements of what the exposure is. You know, when you can do QR codes on tabletops, we can track where that comes from. All those types of elements is what we've talked about. So given that impact, we think it's a tremendous benefit. And one of the questions that was asked at our Tourism Commission meeting was, are we, you know, what else could we spend our money on? If you remember, we came forward with signage or a billboard on the interstate. You know, those types of investments can cost anywhere between $6,000 and $7,000 a month to do that. So again, if we can have exposure the summer or whenever they have activities and events at that stadium, we see it's a tremendous benefit to attracting people here to our destination. What we're looking for is a motion to approve us to partner in this promotional partnership with Lake Country Dockhounds. $50,000 for 3 years, 2023, 2024.
Alderman Kavieski. And we also have the potential partner, Sonny Bando's in the audience too. So if you.
So I think all the options associated with what you reviewed for consideration are great. One of the things that I talked to the Dockhounds about in the very, very beginning was a privately funded shuttle between the Dockhound Stadium and various stops along the way, which would now include the Olympia area, the downtown, Paps Farms. You guys do an incredible job getting people into that stadium, and to have those people easily transported to the different areas, destination stops to enjoy restaurants, bars, and all of the amenities that this community has to offer without having to get their car from the stadium to find a parking spot downtown is beneficial. So I would encourage the Dockhounds to continue to look at that as this community has developed and realize what we had talked about back in 2019. And maybe there is an opportunity for sponsorship. I am in no way whatsoever suggesting that the city would run that. It would mess it up quickly, but it should be a sponsor associated with it.
Alderman Rozak.
Yeah, I'm on the tourism committee, and actually the mayor is as well. So that was very pleasant to see him there. We were cordial. We agreed that this was a good thing. He voted with me, and I think at the end of the day, if this was just pure tax money, I would probably be against this. But this is coming out of the tourism funds. How much do we have in reserves? We have like 300,000 in reserves right now.
125.
Okay. And with the addition of the new Marriott hotel, we're going to see continued increases per year into that reserves, likely through the tourism, right? So I think this spend probably makes sense right now. I don't know how long in the future it does, because I think probably what we as a council should do is, if we have that much money in reserves in tourism and we're spending this much money on this kind of advertising, are we overtaxing the people with the room tax? I think we're at 8% right now, which is the state max for that room tax. So if we've got 225 grand in reserves, we're spending 50,000 a year at Dockhounds for, promoting the city. and we're continuing to put money in reserves during all that and doing other things with the money as well. You know, my thought is I would like to, in the next year, have a discussion about that tax revenue and whether we can adjust that tax down. Even though it's not a tax directly against maybe every single citizen, certainly I have friends that come into town, or there's a wedding that comes into town and they stay at these hotels. It's my friends, it could be my family paying those taxes. Yeah, Lou. But it's, you know, it's people coming to town to enjoy our town for whatever reason, wedding, funeral, you know, whatever they're here for, and we're taxing them still. So, you know, I think we should look at that. I'm in favor of this project as it is right now. But I'd like to, it is really important for us to see some type of tracking numbers at the end of 3 years. I mean, we can't come back in 3 years after spending $150,000 with very little data on where people are driving, if they're looking at stuff, if they're getting that. So I also think the social media mention is a little small. I think it should be like 6, 8, 7. Can we increase the social media I mean, it's only 4. I mean, I could do a Facebook post in about 2 seconds. In fact, I did like 10 sitting here. So, no. So if we could, I'm not gonna make a formal amendment, but I think if we could bump up the social media mentions, that'd be good, because that's where people look at a lot more than anything, so.
Any other comments? Alderman Mulder?
I was initially skeptical, but I do think that this is a big investment that's been made in our community, and there's a symbiotic relationship that's necessary here that we both prosper together, you know, and I think helping, the more we promote our own city, the more we'll get attendance out there. It's circular, so I'm in favor of this, you know, but I do agree with you, Matt. It'd be nice to see how this plays out and have a plan that makes sure we're spending all of our dollars wisely, so.
Alderman Kavieski?
One final thing to that point, because I won't be here on council as in a year or a few months, but what will occur within the city is continued development, perhaps with Olympia and those areas. So to your point, reallocation or enhancement to those dollars that come in can be spread around differently, or different connections can be made as we build. So it's good stuff to always keep an eye on.
If you recall, in the 2023 budget, one of the things we did in order to look at how do you spend down that money is engaging with organizations in the community, creating destination type events to assist them in doing that. So building a grant program to do that, so.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second, Kavieski.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman-Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper?
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski?
Aye.
Alderman Douglas?
Aye.
Our next item, and thank you, Doc Hounds. It'll be fun working closely with you. And sorry you had to wait for the whole meeting.
Pick up now.
Next, the next item.
They're used to long meetings.
Yeah. Sure as heck are.
The month of December, we had no plan commission. There weren't any items that were submitted, so there's nothing there. Typically, our third council meeting then addresses some of those things that go through plan commission. We also looked at things that were time sensitive and not, and we're comfortable to say that we can, if council would like, not have a December 20th, 2022 council meeting, but that is up for someone to make a motion and vote on.
So moved.
Isn't this just a straw poll? It doesn't,
We'll just vote because then we're done.
oh, okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Alderman Kavieski, did you get that? Diane?
Yeah.
Okay, I
Sorry,
want to
Mayor,
make sure
yes.
it goes on record. So there will be no council meeting on December 20th, 2022. On to staff reports, Betsy?
Thank you, Mayor. The item regarding the library budget was an emotional issue for all involved. At our last council meeting, library staff reacted audibly to parts of the discussion and ought to have conducted ourselves more professionally. And for that, I do apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other staff announcements? No other staff reports. Any comments from Alderman?
I have a quick prepared statement.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, I thought you were going to. Wick?
Yeah. No, I think it's notable that the Christmas parade that occurred was fantastic. It's always good to see people fill the streets downtown. I was able to walk along with SOFA, Lori Rivera, and promote the America's New F Word is, fentanyl. And we have a banner that is up at City Beach. It's the first one of multiple communities that will have a banner to create that awareness associated with, and I know you're passionate about it as well. So I think it's notable, and I'm excited about the, I'll call it a Christmas train, holiday train on Friday. It continues to be an incredibly special place all year round, but especially during Christmas time. There's nothing better, so.
Did you hear about the fentanyl bust in Fond du Lac? Wow.
Yeah,
That was unbelievable.
it's
Because I'm
it's
starting to
crazy.
pay attention. That was amazing.
Yeah.
They said it could have killed 100,000 people.
Close the
Really?
border.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah. So we look forward to finding what other things, Lou, that we can do in the city. Any other comments from Alderman? Alderman Spiegelberg.
Just wanted to wish everyone a blessed Christmas as we celebrate the birth of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Amen.
Any other comments from Alderman? Last comments from the mayor. I just want to thank everybody for a really good year. We got a lot of things done. You guys were all engaged. Our staff is spectacular. And when everybody tries to work together, I think we do some really neat stuff. So my hat's off to city staff, to all the council members, and Merry Christmas.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That was good.